Every generation of women in her family died at 33 from a nameless fear. He set out to uncover the truth and realized the next victim was himself. The inherited fear. In the basement of Sydney's old archive building, the air was heavy, smelling of dust and the metal tang of cabinet locks. Thomas Blackwood was used to that scent. It meant proximity to answers others believed lost. Today, he sifted through fragile leather folders with names written in faded ink. One slim volume caught his eye: Morris Family Records, 1819 to 1999. Carefully turning the pages, he noticed an odd recurrence. Almost every generation, the women of the family died at the age of 33. The cause of death column carried unusual phrases: paralysis of terror, cardiac arrest with no pathology, unexplained fading. Page after page, the age column closed the same cycle. Inside the volume lay an unmarked envelope, tucked between entries from the 1880s. The handwriting was ornate, with excessive flourishes, like that of someone used to keeping candle-lit journals. She left without a cry, but her eyes were open to the point of pain. I saw what she saw. No signature. Thomas took a magnifying glass to the paper's margins. In the corner was a faint mark, a crescent moon with a dot in the center. Neatly penciled beside it, 13th Moon. "What's this notation?" he asked the archivist, who had just approached with a tray of files. "Oh, old insurance mark, 19th century. Some companies labeled client files by lunar calendar. No one really remembers why." "So it's unrelated to cause of death?" The archivist shrugged. "Told you, it's just clerical habit." Thomas nodded, but his eyes returned to the symbol. His palms grew damp. A faint ringing filled his ears. He took a deep breath, blaming the room's stifling air. From deeper in the hall came a muffled chime. In the dim space between shelves, he caught a flicker of movement, like a shadow slipping down the aisle. He stood, but found nothing. Back at the table, he closed the folder, but the feeling remained that something had noticed his attention. In his notebook, he wrote the first line of a new case: Morris, 33 years, 13th Moon. Find the cause. Thomas Blackwood's Sydney office sat above a small bookshop, the smell of old pages seeping into his workspace. Across his wide oak desk lay copies of certificates, notarial acts, and yellowed photographs sent by a new client. Sarah Morris arrived exactly on time. Tall, dark hair pulled into a knot, wearing a beige coat slightly too big for her. She removed her gloves, glanced at the shelves, and asked quietly, "Could we close the door?" Thomas nodded, waited for her to sit. "I have my mother's box," she said, brushing the edge of her bag. "There's a diary inside, but I haven't opened it. There's a message, a voice one, the last one. I'm not ready to hear it." Thomas let her speak. "She was 33, so was my grandmother, and all of them—" She hesitated, adjusting her hair. "You find patterns others think are just coincidence, don't you?" "I do," he replied. He leafed through her documents. Dry lines of death certificates, cardiac arrest without organic cause, respiratory arrest, circumstances undetermined, age 33, again and again. "In the 80s, there was a scandal at the coroner's office," he remarked, almost in passing. "A couple of cases reclassified as unexplained. Maybe yours is one of those?" Sarah shook her head. "If only. This started far earlier. Thomas noted a strange symbol, a crescent moon with a dot. He'd already seen it in the archive, but asked carefully, "Have you noticed this mark?" "Yes, on the diary cover. My mother always turned it toward me when I came in." Silence lingered. Thomas wrote in the margin, "Key, Mother." He closed the file and leaned back. "I'll need time to cross-check," he said. She nodded and left. He stayed, staring at the symbol on the copy. Something about it felt closer than he cared to admit. He decided to put off work until morning, but already knew there would be no rest. On a rainy morning, Thomas returned to the city archive, this time to the restricted rare collections. The duty librarian, a gaunt woman with thin lips, pulled a slim, leather-bound volume from the shelf. "Careful, the pages are brittle," she said, setting it before him. "If they crumble, we can't fix them." The spine barely revealed its gilt title, Journal of Thomas Eldritch. The entries began in 1821. The pages smelled faintly of camphor and salt, as if kept near seawater. "When the first full moon rises after her 33rd year, fear will be her tongue. It feeds her as breath does, and then her heart will be mine. The keeper, the obsidian stone, the vessel of debt. Fear gathers in it as water in a well. One bound by blood may take her terror upon himself, but only at the cliffs where we met." In the margins, an amulet sketch and another drawing. A circle rimmed with symbols, labeled "Salt binds her." Thomas traced the words. If the sketch was right, surrounding the victim with a salt circle would halt the collection. But the handwriting differed from the main text, someone else's hand. Possibly a false lead from a previous keeper. Thomas made notes, but didn't rush. He stayed until closing. When the librarian reminded him, he only said, "Yes, in a moment." That night, in the empty hall, he dozed over folded arms. In half-dream, he saw a headland, moonlight on black water, and a dark figure holding a stone that dripped something thick. Waking, still far from morning, he closed the journal, marking "Check Salt Circle Origin," and told himself to pause until tomorrow. But the weight in his chest lingered, as if the lines had struck something inside him. The trip to the coastal town took hours. He arrived by evening, fog already rolling over the waterfront. 3 fishermen sat on the pier mending nets. Thomas greeted them, steering the talk toward local legends. "The headland?" said one, elderly with thick brows. "There's a sound there, like someone moaning under the water. Old folks said it's where the death stone lies. Just tales." "And storms hit there more than the rest of the bay," added another, lighting a cigarette. "We don't go. No fish, anyway." "What about tourists?" Thomas asked. "They love the ghost stories, but the museum won't say much," the third chuckled. "Even if you pay, they keep things back." The next day, he went to the local museum. The curator, a sharp-cheeked woman with a long braid, quickly noticed his interest. She kept touching the medallion at her neck, as if checking it was still there. "Eldritch records are in the closed collection," she said. "Access only by request through the board. Or—" she glanced at the donation box. "How much?" he asked. "50. Everything's expensive now." He paid. She led him to a locked display case. Inside, a headland engraving and a note on Eldritch's vow. The keys with the board chair. "If you want copies, leave an address." Also, she hesitated, Eldritch had a bank deposit box. I know the number, but without family consent, no access. At a pier bar, Thomas weighed her words. Fishermen argued over diesel prices. A TV in the corner warned of a storm in 2 days. He wrote, "Key to deposit box, through relatives." Next morning, he returned to the museum, but the door was locked. Technical reasons. He left, knowing the answer was still inside, and the storm clock was running down. That evening, Thomas spread archival printouts across his table. In old Blackwood branch records, inconsistencies emerged. One document named his great-grandmother's husband as Henry Blackwood. Another bore the note, "Adopted." The contradictions looked deliberate. He filled out an online DNA test form, took samples, sent them to the lab. Results promised in 10 days. All he could do was wait. That same evening, Sarah arrived, dark circles under her eyes, fingers twisting her sleeve. She perched on the edge of a chair, avoiding her reflection in the glass cabinet door. "I sleep with the light on now," she admitted. "But even then, sometimes I think there's someone in the mirror." She took a small wooden box from her bag, brass clasp locked, no key. "It was my mother's," she said. "I haven't opened it. I can't." Thomas set it aside. The key would have to wait. Days later, Sarah called again. She'd found it hidden in an old coat lining. She arrived trembling. They opened the box together. On worn velvet lay an obsidian amulet with the crescent and dot symbol. The stone seemed to drink the light. "Do you want to take it?" she asked, not touching it. Thomas picked it up. Instantly, cold surged through him, then a burning heat. A ringing filled his head, fingers trembling. He set it back gently, hiding how badly it shook him. "I'm fine," he breathed. But she'd seen the tremor. "Do you feel what I do at night?" He didn't answer, just closed the box, thinking, if the DNA test confirmed kinship, the stone already knew his name as it had known theirs, and his time to choose was running out. The night was moonless, the storm pushing in from the south. Thomas drove the empty coastal road, the amulet's weight in his pocket. It pulsed faintly, as if it knew where it was going. At the base of the headland, he took a lantern and climbed the wet rocks. The wind tore words from his lips. Salt spray stung his face. The amulet's symbol began to warm, and a low whisper filled his head. "It can be transferred, but someone must accept." He clenched it, trying to block the voice. Sarah's face flared in his mind, smiling and alive, then as one staring death in the eye, unable to look away. Her fear, or yours, decide. Fear couldn't be destroyed, only moved. If he left, the curse would return to her. "Me," he said into the dark, "take it from her." The amulet seared his palm, as if burning consent into his skin. Cold spread through his chest, and with it a strange relief. The weight was gone, not vanished, but passed on. He stepped to the edge, raised the stone, and dropped it into the black fissure. The splash was lost under the wind, but deep below, something glinted, eyes looking up. The whisper faded. The wind eased. The sea was quieter than any storm should allow. On his wrist, where he'd held the amulet, a pale crescent with dot surfaced. He walked back to the car over slick rocks. Silence followed him like an unseen shadow. Balance restored, but not broken. The debt now knew his face. A year and 2 months later, Sarah stood on her apartment balcony, wineglass in hand. She'd turned 34, a milestone no woman in her family had crossed before. Thomas arrived with lilies and a cake, watching her laugh among friends with quiet satisfaction. The Morris women were safe. His own life had changed. Sleep became rare luxury. Nights found him in a chair by the window, listening to emptiness. On full moons, the air in his flat chilled from within, his breath fogging even on warm days. He no longer used elevators. Enclosed spaces pressed on his chest like when the amulet touched his skin. In his study, a calendar hung on the wall. Small crosses marked each month since that night at Headland. Tonight, he drew another, the 13th full moon, a completed cycle, though not the end. The night was still. Thomas worked at his desk when moonlight slid over the window. On the glass, a faint shimmer, a dot within a pale crescent, just like the amulet's mark. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving only cold in his palms. He opened his notebook and, under today's date, wrote, "Balance held. For now." Closing it, he leaned back. Below, the city moved in its familiar rhythm. But for him, each new month was a reminder. The debt hadn't vanished. It had simply changed address.